What are my dreams about language technologies? Well, I look at it very much from an application point of view, and my applications all come from trying to provide access to various types of information. So what sort of language technologies do I need to use there, and in what sort of new scenarios do I see new challenges for language technology coming up? You're still with me? Good. So I'm going to give you a few slides about information access, and then I'm going to wrap up with some ideas about newly emerging tasks on new types of data where I think new types of language technology are needed. So let's go back in history a bit and think about web search and where language technology is in web search. Well, if you go back in web search, then it all started out with old-fashioned content-based retrieval engines that had been around for quite a bit. Right? So what did you need there? Morphology, summarization to generate query-dependent snippets. More and more we have seen over the past 5 to 10 years attention devoted to entities, so products. If the engine recognizes a product in the query, you'll get something special, whether it's a location or a CD or. But that's being taken a step further. You can look for people. Whom do I need for language technology? The engine will give you, at least some engines will now give you, a ranked list of people, another ranked list of documents. And the other way around. Who's this person? What do you need? Well, not pages on this person. It's key snippets. Hans does this, he's known for that, he organizes this event. And of course, machine translation is just available now on the web and people use it. Naive end users use it. Now, so that content-based line has been in web search since the beginning. What came after about 10 years was a lot of attention to quality of the content and trying to assess that. And you can look at the quality from a linguistic perspective, the quality of the text, the sort of quality that you would expect around this topic. And of course you can look at the quality with graph-based methods, as we all know. PageRank and such methods. So more of a social indicator of the quality of the content. Now, over the past 5 years or so, the third dimension is increasingly being used, and that's information about users. Mined either from profiles or from log files or from people like you. So where's the language technology there? Well, in understanding the main topics in the sort of content that you typically deal with, in understanding the meaning of your queries, and in trying to identify your intent in a sort of mixture of the content of the material that you're looking for and your interactions with the engine. So are you looking to buy something? Are you looking to find out about a topic? Are you looking to download a movie or what? Right? So trying to get to the intent. So that's, you know, if you like, 20 years of web search in one slide with language technology. And you know, what was the main challenge there is to do this on an insanely large scale. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. This message is clear. Okay. And how has it changed? Well, in this way. You know, instead of just a channel for publishing, it has become a channel for sharing and for collaboration, for communication, actually for living your life. a large part of our lives we now live online. So we share the knowledge, we keep track of friends, we share experiences, we express views, comments. News is not grabbed from a newspaper anymore, we get it from the web, and we also get lots of responses to it from the web. We do our networking through LinkedIn, our socializing. A lot of playing is done in insanely large settings on the web. We document our lives on the web. And we do a lot of creation on the web, together with others, alone, in groups. Okay, so why bother? Well, I come to this from an information access point of view. So here's a lot of content, a lot of new content, a new type of content. So the primary issue here is provide access to it. But then what sort of access? And what are you providing access to? Well, it's a different type of content. Yes, there are facts like we used to have. But there are also a lot of subjective aspects to it. Experiences, opinions. There's a lot of focus on entities, people, products. And it's all highly interlinked. Comments on a news item, a social link to a colleague, etc. A YouTube video with comments and URLs shortened through bit.ly, whose popularity you can then follow online. It's all interlinked. So we have new tasks, and I'm going to show you a few in a few minutes with new information needs. So they call for new retrieval models, new algorithms, new ranking methods. You know, ranking content from a blog is not the same as ranking web pages from Wikipedia. There are different information needs, there are different judgments about what's relevant and what's not. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'll flash some tasks by you that we've been working on, or are working on actually, and next to it I'll show some of the language technologies and that we're using. Now, these language technologies are very familiar to you, but they all got a new twist in this social setting. And at the end I'll tell you some of these twists. So one task that is important here in this social web is issue management. So something happens, how do people respond? So there's a leak in an oil pipeline. What do people think? We have an issue emerging. Who are the stakeholders in these issues? How should we manage the damage? So that's the task setting. What do you need? Well, framing is an interesting problem that comes up. Different ways in which people talk about the issue. And from the framing you get a lot about whether it's pro or con or neutral. Longitudinal querying is important. Actually, it's so important that I've mentioned it twice. So that's looking at developments over time. Not just what is happening now, but how does now compare to yesterday or last week, right? So that's a different type of querying. We're not just taking snapshots like a web search engine does now. No, we want the view to the past and the comparison with the past and the changes. Computational social science. So what do some social scientists do? Well, think about communication. Think about identifying key stakeholders. Think about predicting who's going to respond to this. What is that prediction? Well, in a sense, the search engine is becoming our consciousness, because what's happening? If so many things happen online, and they happen in near real time, we just open the search engine and we'll get a view of what plays, what's dominant, what's not so dominant, what's on people's minds. If you can do this over a longer period of time, what can you do? You can learn. You can identify patterns. What can you do if you have patterns? You predict. Okay, what's this one? Well, newspapers are having a very hard time because they're no longer the primary source of news. People get their news elsewhere. If a plane crashes, are you going to look it up in a newspaper? No. You go to a website, or you will have Twitter feeds or whatever. You do not go for the facts to the newspaper anymore. What do you go for to the newspaper then? Well, they don't know yet. At least not all of them know yet. And some of them are thinking about, well, embedding the news, contextualizing the news, the historical views, the longitudinal queries come up again, identifying the key players. So as you see these red blocks growing, they come back again and again and again in each of these use cases. Impact prediction. That's a nice one that we're working on with media analysts. One day someone knocked on our door and said, we're thinking about changing our, this was from a political party, we're thinking about changing our angle on this issue. Can you tell us what's going to happen? No, we can't. But we do know where you're going to be. You need to be watching out carefully. Why didn't we know? Because we just don't have examples. Where do we have examples? Well, think of newspapers that nowadays have lots and lots of these comment facilities. Right? I mean, you must have seen them. CNN has them, the BBC has them, many of the major newspapers have these comment facilities. Okay, now we can do prediction, because we can try to identify topics that people really respond to. What makes them respond to these topics? How do they respond? How does it differ per channel? Right? So that's where you can actually do impact prediction. And the challenge here is making it sufficiently abstract so that you can do the predictions, sufficiently abstract topics. Another big problem here is entity normalization. So we all know what named entity recognition is, right? Spotting occurrences of a named entity. What is named entity normalization? Will reduce it to a canonical form. You could use linked open data for that, or the Berlin phone book, a canonical form. And of course we have always had to do that, always also on news data, on properly edited data, but it is a real issue now with the social data. People are insanely creative. There's spam, and if you want to do reliable statistics over these sort of data, you have to do the normalizations. Yes, I saw 250 mentions of this politician. And yesterday, in this context of this topic, it was just 140. So you have to be able to do the normalization correctly. Otherwise, your predictions are way off. Here's an interesting one, consumer mining. So sentiment analysis has gained a lot of attention with all the social media over the last 5 years. Now, that's often just about counting pros and counting cons, and then giving a green flag or a red flag or a sort of neutral orangey flag. But you can go way, way further. So an interesting scenario is you have a company that is thinking about developing the next generation of their product. So mind the consumer forums where customers talk about their current version of the product. What do they do with their TV? What fails? What do they like? And try to distill from this an idea of where the TV should go. And you can actually take this a step further. You can just do the observing, like I just described, but you can take it a step further. And this is what some of the larger multinationals are now doing. They have these collaboration facilities for their employees, and they have some editors that, strategically feed these environments with questions or with issues. And then they start monitoring how the people in the organization respond, what comes up, which subtopics, who claims the topic. So it's a bit like the old-fashioned ID box that you'd have, near the entrance of a building in a big office. Put your great idea in an envelope in this box, and you might have €1,000 in your paycheck. But now it's online, it's live, and you need to monitor it. And here's another interesting one, especially in view of the social climate change topic that was mentioned yesterday. Mining open sources. So open source intelligence here means the sources that you're mining are open, not necessarily the tools that you're using. So any open sources that we can all get to without special licenses. Blogs, discussion fora, comments, Twitter feeds, you name them. Okay, so what are some of the meta issues that come along here, and where some of the major scientific challenges are? Well, a lot of this has to be done on insane amounts of data. That's extremely dynamic. A snapshot now will be different from a snapshot in an hour, and a snapshot, or if someone wants an up-to-date picture, then you cannot come with yesterday's data. It needs to be incredibly robust, not just because of the spam, but also because of the very informal language usage and the very creative language usage. And it's also highly interdisciplinary. Certainly, if you look at these tasks, from my point of view, as someone with an interest in search engines, I don't know what relevance means for, say, an open source intelligence agent. What are they looking for? Who's an interesting person in open sources for them? They need to tell me. Then I can come up with algorithms, and then they need to help me evaluate those algorithms. Similarly with issue management, I need to talk to social scientists, to marketeers. Similarly with the co-creation stuff, I need to talk to, well, media analysts, designers, product developers. You cannot just do this by yourself. You have to do it together. They need our technology, and we need their problems, and at the end of the day, their evaluations of our technologies. So, the to-dos. There you are. Thank you.
So we have a to-do, the European Social Media Monitor, and we have time for at least one question.
I agree with almost everything you said. The only problem I see is when you say the web has changed, and you showed all these web pages, they all come from the United States. And the problem is that I think most of them, almost 90%. I think what you also suggested, all the nice tools, I think Google, for instance, is the right company to do this, and they do it. And of course we can support Google, and we do. But I think in order to convince the European Commission I'm very skeptical, because I had a lot of talks now in the Future Internet Initiative, and actually the European politicians want to have something which is based here, which is serving our industry, and we are not very strong in this industry you are mentioning. I'm not turning, I think the topics you mentioned very good, but I think this from the economical point of view and also political, it will be very hard to convince people that this can lead to economic success in Europe, because typically all these things are successful either in US, sometimes even more in Asia, but Europe is very weak in commercializing this type of results, I think.
Yeah, I see the problem, and I'm aware of the problem. So a couple of points here. As far as the science goes, we're just as good as Asia or Europe or the US. All of these use cases that I mentioned are honest-to-God use cases with industrial stakeholders. So the people that need the outcomes of these tools, they're based here, and they're now funding this research. At least in my case.
Yeah, but I guess the problem is that Facebook or Twitter, these are all US-based companies.
Well,
it's a pity that we don't have the very nice European social network platform.
Some countries do. For instance, in Holland, Hives is by far the biggest social networking site with over 90% of the market.
What site?
Hives. It's not known outside the Netherlands, but it is.
Yeah, that's true.
Some of the people's search engines that you might not be aware of, they're Europe-based.
So we have another comment.
But I see your point. Yes.
Yeah,
but I don't think we should give up now.
Oh, no, we won't give up. Next comment.
Yeah, thank you for a very interesting presentation that really summed up all the changes that had been taking place on the internet during the last years. I think also for the investigation of language and with regard to computational linguistics or language technology, this is an interesting perspective, because language change, is taking place in a different way now than it was before. We just spoke about the oral tradition, we spoke about the written tradition, and the question is, where are language trends actually made? And I think before this, we had a situation where you had sort of media and others who were the main trendsetters, communicating from one to many, and many language trends were established there. But the thing that you are showing us, and what many people also have realized, is that now we have this many-to-many communication going on, and that means that the language and the language trends will be set there. So it is an enormous good opportunity actually to start to observe what is going to happen and how languages are developing in the net. And I think that's where a chance for language technology is emerging very easily now.
Yeah, I fully agree. So this longitudinal querying that I mentioned early, you see that everywhere, including in the cases that you're mentioning. I want to get back to your question. So the football vision. Now, wouldn't it be great to also have a handle on what people feel, and what they type and how they communicate? And so all of this social media analysis you can just have as a textual layer underneath your football vision.
Absolutely.
And you can try to correlate what happens in the situations that you observe directly and those that are ongoing in the world, and you just grab from the cloud.
But the only point, I guess, was that if we say we want to use this, and it's very good for language technologies, but who is profiting? The user, of course. But maybe Twitter, maybe Facebook, maybe all these US-based companies are profiting. So why do we want to invest European money? So in the end, they have a better business. And that is, we can talk about this afterwards. Maybe we should go and make more PR for European social networks. And first of all, we don't want to ask anybody, but we will find that some of our colleagues are not on in any social network, and that they can start the habit, and then we get the networks, and then we get the knowledge and the emotions. So thank you again for your talk. We have another 30 minutes. And